सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So now the different reasons were given because the orientation that the waking is more real, okay? So or not even more real, but the waking is the reality, and swapna is mithya is easily understood. Okay? So therefore, to shake this understanding that waking is the reality, some implicit assumptions that we have, based on which we make the conclusion that waking is the reality and what is in the dream is mithya, is now what was examined, made explicit and then negated. What are some of the logics that we saw? The first one was what? Drishyatvat. Objectifiable. It is something which is not only chitta kala, even when I am not thinking about it, it is still there. But then the same argument was turned around that even if you are not thinking about it like a dream mountain, it's still there. Doesn't make it more real, because as Savita said, that also has a dependent reality. Okay? The other one was prayojanata. You can say that, oh, what is in the waking is useful, therefore it is more real. Then what did we say? Yeah, it's true. What is in exactly what is in the waking is useful in waking and not in the dream. And the same way, what is in the dream is useful in the dream and not in waking. So therefore, that logic applies to both. It doesn't make one more real than the other. Right? Then the third example was given was what?
It was ever changing. Before coming to birth, I was not there, and after I will not be there, and even in this life, I am constantly changing.
Excellent. Verse 6. Okay, so that means the third thing is that whether it is waking or the dream, okay, before it was not there, after it will not be there, and while it is existing, if I inquire into the truth, what? It's changing all the time, and I can't even find what is it ultimately which is changing. Okay? And that is equal in both dream and in waking. So therefore, both are mithya. One is not more satya than the other. Okay? Then the fourth argument was given is, here there is something which is internal and external. Okay? And in the dream everything is internal. Then what was said?
In both cases, you are the one looking at things, so it's equally objectifiable. And also, if you can create the things in the dream, then how do you turn the dream?
What was said more precisely is this so-called feeling of internal and external. It exists both in waking and in dream. Okay? So while you are in waking world, what seems to you like internal? Your body. And what seems to you like external? Everything else. While you are in dream, your dream body seems to you like what? Internal. And everything else in the dream seems like you as what? External. So internal, external is there in both, right? That does not make one thing more real than the other, because in spite of this perception of internal and external, everything both resolve in one. Okay, so now therefore you see all these different standpoints which shake our this whole orientation that waking is the reality. Because otherwise what happens is, I can understand in Vedanta class that okay, this physical body is not I, the world is mithya, but the minute I walk out, what happens? I begin to what? Again give absolute reality. We are not talking about empirical reality, is true, right? The absolute reality to everything. Okay? So in order to negate that, all these number of reasons are given. Yes? Okay. Now, what is very interesting is, in the next verse, it is said, this is really the key of Vedanta. Okay? Now he is asking a question. He is asking the question which is Ubhayorapi Vaitatyam Bhedanam Sthanayor Yadi Ta Etan Buddhyate Bhedan Kovai Tesham Vikalpakaha. Okay? So now he is saying, okay, now what you are really clearly showing me is that waking is not really real. Both are mithya. Okay? Both waking and dream are mithya. Therefore it says, if you say the objects in both waking and dreaming are unreal, then I have a question, who perceives all these objects and who indeed is their maker? Okay? So this is something which is asked because what we have seen in the Mandukya Upanishad, the answer to this is given. Right? So now we are reiterating the answer that is already given in Mandukya Upanishad. Because otherwise what will happen is, when the same question is asked to you, then you will begin to again wonder, yeah, that's true. But you will forget to bring what all we have studied in Mandukya to be able to answer this question. So Gaudapada reminds you what is the answer to this question that is given in Mandukya Upanishad. Right? So the answer lies in verse 13. It says, Vikara utpatti paran bhavan antaschite vyavasthitan niyatamscha bahish chittam evam kalpayate prabhu. Okay? The Lord brings to manifestation. Who brings into manifestation all these mithya objects which are what? Seen in the waking and in dream, which represent what? The physical and the subtle. Okay? Now, Prabhu, the Lord brings to manifestation all empirical worlds which are existing within His mind. Okay? Turning outward, He creates the ordained objects falling within the order. This is how the Lord brings about what? Or projects or imagines the universe. Okay? Now this is really the key to Vedanta. Okay? It's unfortunate Preeti is not here because she asked the question in the last class, which was a very important question. Okay? The question is, okay, I understand that everything is mithya. I understand, first I thought this bottle is satyam, real. Now I see that it has a dependent reality. I still need the bottle and I still need to drink water from it, so what has changed? Only terminology has changed. Before I thought it was real, now I give it a new name called dependent reality, mithya. Nothing has really changed for me. Okay, this is where you really have to think through things. Okay, so that means it's true that this is dependent reality. Okay, so therefore there has to be something upon which this dependent reality exists. Okay, so what is that answer that will decide how useful this knowledge is for me? Imagine, because in fact with the advent of quantum physics, the scientists also know that this is mithya. They also know that this is a dependent reality. Okay? And where do they go to? They go up to atoms. Right? So that means what you see is as very real, scientist sees it as not so real. It sees he or she sees it as dependent reality, and it goes up to atom. Okay? Now, just the fact that everything is atom, how much wiser does it make, or what difference does it make to my living? Not really much. Okay? But suppose I don't stop at the level of atoms, and I stop at the level, I go one step further, and if I begin to see that that atom also depends upon what? All knowledge, which is Ishvara, then it is totally different. Because then I say all that is here is this amazing intelligence which has the power to manifest as all these different forms, okay, through different laws. Then what is my vision? That of reverence. There is a huge shift, because I don't just see atom as that which is an independent reality based on which the entire world is made. What am I seeing? I am seeing the presence of Ishvara there, the all-knowledge. If that is the case, what is my vision? There is a complete shift in the vision. Okay? This is where comes the prayer to the waters. This is where comes the prayer to the sun. This is where comes the touching of the earth, because I see Ishvara there. The whole empirical world depends upon what? The all-knowledge, not just some inert atoms. Then comes my attempt, then that means there is a whole shift. Every form is a manifestation of Ishvara, the all-knowledge, which is arranging the so-called atoms and particles in a way that this huge intelligent creation comes into being. Then I begin to what? Look at the laws which govern what? How this each object is made, and which are the laws which determine what? The interaction between all these different objects. That's when I get an insight into the different laws which are there in the universe, and also the laws which apply to my existence, which are laws of dharma and karma. And that's where then comes the attempt to what? Be a mature person, because I'm connected to everybody else, both at physical level, subtle level, and causal level. Okay? And my actions count not only for me, but for everybody else. That's where comes a very huge shift. So what Vedanta teaches you is not ordinary. It's a shift of vision. Otherwise, what difference does it make whether this has a dependent reality or independent reality? It's just inconsequential for my existence. Okay? This is where comes what we call the spiritual culture. This is where comes, as what she was saying, you see, look upon everything as what? Divine. And this is why I keep saying that is, please don't make this huge, totally unnecessary division of material and spiritual. This goes against the Vedic vision. Partless whole. That is the vision. Oneness is the vision. Okay? And that oneness, what? That one reality without undergoing any change, what? as though what? Has this all knowledge and all power to manifest in form of the whole Jagat. Whole Jagat includes what? Physical, subtle and causal. So that means your vision is not ultimately there is nothing, the whole thing is mithya and then there is nothing. That will not live no fulfillment in your life. Or it is atom, live no fulfillment in your life. But all that is here is Ishvara, and you have identity with Ishvara is a vision which will bless you. Okay, so this is where Prabhu, don't, where this inquiry into dependent reality ends is a key. If it is just ending randomly at either atom or nothingness, who cares? But if it ends at Prabhu, Ishvara, then it is very different. The whole thing changes for me. Okay, so this is where he says that Vikaraha Utpatti Bhavan, all that which has come into manifestation, okay, which is what? Niyatamscha Bahishchittam, all the external world. And within this, what? Everything that I project also, it's coming from, it is Kalpayate, it is all manifestation of Prabhu, this all knowledge and all power. From the standpoint of the world, it is all knowledge and all power, Ishvara. From its own standpoint, what is it?
All knowledge.
No.
From its own standpoint, it is
Awareness.
Satyam, Jnanam, Anandam. Ishvara is not confused about that. Okay, so this is what the vision of Vedanta is. A huge deviation from a normal so-called partial vision of world being mithya. Okay, so that is verse 13. Then you have the verse which is 14. Here he says, Chitta kala hi ye antastu dvayakalascha ye bahihi kalpita evate sarve visheshaha na anya hetukaha. Okay. So here he says, objects that exist internally, as long as the thought of them lasts, the objects that are perceived outside and also can be recognized at 2 points in time are all but kalpita. There is no other basis for differentiating one from the other. Okay? So therefore, the only way that you can distinguish between the so-called empirical objects and your created objects are what? The empirical objects are dvayakala. Dvayakala means when you are thinking, when you are seeing the tree, it is there, and when you are not seeing the tree, it is still there. Okay? And if it is the tree of the dream, what is it? It is only antakala. It is only there as long as what? You see it. Okay? So the only difference between the empirical object and your created object is, one is dvayakala. Even when you are not seeing it, it is there, the waking objects. And the dream objects they are there only till you see them. But in the waking also, when we are subjective and we imagine objects, they are antakala or dvayakala. If I have subjectivity and I see something, they are still antakala. Okay? So don't think that antakala is only in the dream and dvayakala is in waking. Okay? In waking itself comes what? Antakala and dvayakala. Okay? But both are what? Equally mithya. Kalpita eva te sarve visheshaha anya hetuka. Okay? So therefore, the only way we can differentiate one from the other is whether it is dvayakala or antakala. But it doesn't take away the mithyatvam from the object. Whether it is dvayakala, which is that means whether it is there when I see it or not, or it is there only when I see it, still when I examine what it is, it will collapse into this awareness. So that means that antakala and dvayakala does not become the basis for me to establish the reality of an object. Both are equally mithya. Okay? Just exactly as Savita said, that the dream tree that I imagine, it is mithya by, because it depends upon what?
My dream.
My tree, right? My awareness and the creation of my awareness, therefore it is mithya. The external tree is not my imagination. It is there, even if I am not seeing it. If I go to sleep, I go away, the tree is still there, even if it's not in my vision. Okay? But does it then give it more reality? Because if I look into the tree, again what? It depends upon something else. Not my mind, but on something else. So therefore, it is equally mithya. Right? Because Vaitathya Prakaranam is to make you see that what you give as reasons to establish reality for the waking are not valid reasons. Okay? So this is what he says, that Dvayakala and Chittakala doesn't make, these are the distinctions within Mithya, doesn't make one more Satyam than Mithya. Okay? Then the next verse, it says, Avyakta eva ye antastu sfuta evacha ye bahihi kalpita eva te sarve vishishastvatu indriyantare. Okay? So that means that what is the difference between your, what is either only in your dream world, okay, or what you imagine while in waking, which is only what? Your creation, and the other one which are external to you. What is the other difference? The difference is that we saw mithya are of two types. One is which one? Vyavaharika, and the other one is pratibhasika. Okay. The Vyavaharika means that if there is an object called this table, how do I know that there is an object table?
See it or touch it.
I have to use my sense organs. Okay? It is only through the sense organs that I see the objects of the world. Okay? So therefore, they are what? They are there, and I need to use my sense organs. When I imagine a tree, do I need the eyes? No. I don't need to use my eyes. What is happening? I'm just using my memory to create a tree, which is not something that I need to use my eyes for. The eyes were used before, right? Now I'm not using the eyes anymore. I'm just using my memory to create the imagined tree. Okay? So what is the difference between my creation, whether it is in the dream or in the waking when I am in a subjective mode or in an imaginary mode? See, subjective, what is very important to understand is that sometimes it's not that I am always in a subjective mode when I am creating a mental picture. a lot of my creative work happens where? In the mind. A lot of creative work happens in the mind. So every time, and therefore that time I'm not really in touch with the physical world. So that means when I'm just operating at the level of mind, I am where? In the mental mode. Sometimes when I'm in the mental mode, I'm imagining things. And sometimes I'm highly subject, very constructive imagination, which is required for an artist, it is required for a musician. Okay? And sometimes what? I'm in a subjective mode. Okay? But the reality is that that particular thing is what? It is something which is, one is which requires sense organs, and in the other one, without sense organs, it operates. That is the difference. But in terms of mithyatvam, can I say that only the objects for which I require my sense organs are more real? No. Because we make these conclusions about what is more real based on certain implicit assumptions, of which we ourselves are not aware. Because you say the world is real. I will ask you why. And if you're clever, you will give these reasons why you think the world is real. Then Gaudapada will refute those arguments and say, hey, this is not enough reason for you to conclude that the world is more real. You understand how the Karika proceeds?
First he showed how the dream and waking are almost same, and then he showed the only differences are these.
Exactly. Absolutely. Right? There are some differences, but those differences don't account for what? The conclusion that one is absolutely real and the other one is unreal.
So does the law of relativity apply here?
Yeah. What does it mean, law of
Meaning
relativity?
that in relation to dream, this is more real. So just the two, the real Jagat and the dream or the imagination world. So does the law of relativity apply? But between the two, this seems more real.
Yeah, this seems more real, but this is what he's saying.
Only limited to this much, not going
Not
further.
yes.
Then the law of relativity does apply, right?
Yeah, that's true. So one is Dvayakala and the other one is Antakala.
Yeah,
there is no difference there. Right.
Sense
It is
of
only
the-
there till you see it. The
Yeah.
other one is even when you don't see it, it is still there. But that then doesn't make it
Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
inquiry based.
exactly.
But between the two
Yeah,
worlds,
that is, and that's why
they-
he's using two
yeah.
words, right? One is Antakala and Dvayakala. If they were exactly the same, two words will not be used. Right? Is it clear? Is it clear? What is mean?
Also, one difference that comes to my mind is, I don't know if he has talked about it also, is that in the waking state, if I am seeing a tree, you can also see that same tree.
Yeah.
Other person else, but in
Yeah.
the dream, only I am
Only you
seeing
can
it.
see,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
that
So
also
that is
gives it more-
again the further
That is-
conclusion that it is real.
What we
Yeah.
say Bahikala, no? That means even if I'm not seeing it, it's still there.
there.
So therefore, if
Everyone
it is
can
still
see
there,
it.
everybody else can see it. That is like an extending the logic.
Extension.
Yeah, extension of that logic. Okay. So here he says, now, ultimately he goes back to verse 17 and he then says that how does this whole appearance come? Okay. Here he says, Anishchita yatha rajju andhakare vikalpita sarpa dharadi bhir bhavaihi tadvat atma vikalpitaha. He says, now what exactly is the problem here? Okay, what are we all, how does this whole inquiry apply to me and my satisfaction and my meaning? he comes back to oneself and one's own pursuit for freedom. Okay? So he explains, he says, as a rope lying in darkness whose nature is not well ascertained is imagined or mistaken to be a snake or a line of water, so also is Atman imagined in various ways. Okay? So this whole inquiry is not just an abstract inquiry into reality. This is why we call it a spiritual pursuit. How does it help me? How does it change my life? This huge discussion about reality, satya, mithya, and this and that, where does it all end? If it ended, as I said, in atoms, what difference does it make to me? Whether this depends upon atoms or a particle or X or Y or a quark, what difference? Doesn't change anything much for me. But what is this inquiry leading you to discover about yourself? If it ended at atom, who cares? But if it ended at yourself and it changed the perception of yourself, about yourself, from what? One little entity in the universe which is constantly struggling, okay, for satisfaction, to what? Discovering that I am
Already satisfied and complete.
I am Brahman. I am that awareness which is the basis of the whole universe. Can you ask this question? What does it matter to me? Because when I make a mistake about how I see things, it includes what? The world and myself. And within that distortion, I am making conclusions about the world and I am also equally making conclusions about myself. And given taking those conclusions as reality, I am trying to find solution. And as long as that those assumptions remain unquestioned, there is no solution. Because the assumption itself is wrong. So the only solution to my search, is what? I look at myself, I look at the world, I look at the cause of the world and totally revise my vision. What is my vision? When I expose myself to the teaching of Upanishad, what is the change of vision?
I am one with the Atman.
Exactly. In fact, I, the Atma. Atma in Sanskrit means I. Okay? I am what? I am the whole. I am limitless. The temple you enter, the first thing, Aham Brahma Asmi. What is this? Aham, I, what? The individual who thought, I am so little, I am so insignificant, and roaming around from place to place, looking for that satisfaction. What is now the vision of that individual? I am Brahman. What is this Brahman? As if I can remind you, the root, Bruhi, in the sense of
Vastness.
bigness, vastness. Okay? Generally, the word big, as we saw, is used as an adjective to a noun. Okay? So therefore, the bigness it conveys depends upon the noun that it qualifies. So when I say a big mouse, you have a certain idea of bigness of the mouse. And if I say a big mountain, you have a totally different idea of that bigness. Because the bigness is conveyed by what? The noun. In one case the noun is mouse, in the other case the noun is mountain. Now here the word big is not used as an adjective to a noun, but as a noun itself. How big? Is it restricted? Is it qualified by anything? It's not qualified by anything. So that means limitlessly big. Then you can say, how can I, this little individual who had just this little birth date few years ago and is going to go and die with all my problems and all my limitations, how can I be limitless? The whole teaching is not for you to see that the world is mithya. Please understand. The whole teaching is for you to discover you are what? Satyam. If mithya is your intention, it is useless. Everything is unreal. So, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Where there is Mithya, there is a Satyam there. And that Satyam happens to be you. And not knowing you to be the Satyam, you are constantly searching for something. It is the solution to your incessant search. Don't say, where does this inquiry lead to? Because this inquiry certainly doesn't end at atoms. If it ends at world is mithya, it is nothing but atoms, it doesn't enrich me in any way. But if the inquiry leads to all knowledge, which is that which gives rise to all the forms, whether physical, subtle, and arranges it all through its laws, my God. And then one step further, I have identity with that all knowledge. Oh my God. That is a huge vision. It's not an ordinary vision. Okay? So this whole inquiry leads to my fulfillment, my total paradigm shift as to what I see myself as, what I understand Ishvara to be, what I understand the universe to be, what I understand my role in this universe to be. There is a total shift and I am blessed. Okay? So this is the inquiry. The inquiry is not about mithyatvam of Jagat. The inquiry is about what? Discovering the truth of the entire mithya Jagat. This is where a lot of people said Shankara was a Mayavadi. Mayavadi means saying that the entire Jagat is mithya. Hey, Shankara was not Mayavadi. Shankara was saying what? Atma is Brahman. Which is the vision of Upanishad. The Upanishad's commitment is not to show you world is mithya. Upanishad's commitment is what? To make you see you are Brahman. And in order to understand you are Brahman, you need to understand what is your relationship with the world. your relationship with the world is, you are not one little entity struggling in the world. Your relationship with the world is, you are the truth of the world. And if you don't know, can you say, oh, what difference does it make to my life? Can you say that? How far is the vision that I am a one struggling individual in the world who is mortal to I am the truth of the whole world? Can you say what difference does it make whether I understand one or the other? It makes all the difference in the world. Okay? And this is exactly what is said in this verse. What is said in this verse is, what is the nature of the problem? He says, Anishchita yatha rajju andhakare vikalpitaha. Okay? So that means that there is this rajju. Rajju means a rope. There is darkness because of which this rope is, some object is seen. If nothing was seen, there will never be a problem. Right? Something is seen, but what happens? It is not seen accurately. Then, because something is seen and it is not seen accurately, what happens? All the imaginations happen. Some person sees it as a rope, a snake. Somebody sees it as what? A stream of water. Different people see it differently. So that means many different opinions arise with reference to what that is. Atma is exactly the same. Can you say Atma is totally not known? Everybody knows that I am. Because you know I am, therefore your search for freedom. If you did not know I am, you will not have search for freedom. You will not go travel around the world looking for the freedom that centered on Atma. You know Atma is there, but if you totally knew it, will you be searching for it? If you totally knew its reality, there will not be any search. So that means, what is the nature of the problem? You know I am, but you don't know clearly who you are, and therefore, what happens? Many different conclusions about Atma. Okay? Somebody thinks, I am just as good as the body, and when the body goes, I'm going to go. Somebody thinks, what? I will survive the death of the physical body and I will travel from one place to the other. The third person will think, oh, I have only one life, and after that either I will go to eternal heaven or eternal hell. All these different possible things about what is that nature of Atma and where does it go, where does it come from, all different. Every philosophy comes up with some idea. That means Atma is known but not fully known. Just like something is there is known in case of the rope, but what exactly is there is not known, which gives rise to many different conclusions until what? Until what? Until you re-examine what is and understand accurately what is. Knowledge is what? Vastu Tantra. Vastu Tantra means it's in keeping with what is. It has got nothing to do with your imagination. If there is a rope, it is a rope. You imagine it to be a snake, does it become snake? You imagine it to be what? A stream of water, does it become stream of water? It doesn't depend upon what you think. It is what it is. So if Atma is already limitless, it doesn't depend upon what you imagine it to be. You can imagine it to be just this little individual and suffer all your life from limitation. Does it make any difference to Atma? It doesn't. Okay? So that means if you have concluded Atma to be one limited entity where itself is limitless, what do you need to do? What do you need to do? Re-examine what is the nature of Atma with this teaching and see what it is. Where does it lead you to? Okay? That is the only way to correct the error. Okay? The question, who am I and what is my role in the universe, what am I here for, it will not cease until you have found the solution. And if it is a partial solution, he will say in the later verses, it will satisfy you for a while and then again you will be searching. And if it is a partial solution, then what? Again searching, again searching, again searching. Till the time that you know clearly what is. Okay? So this is what we call a spiritual pursuit. It is search for answer to who am I. This inquiry is not about, oh, this is atom. It's nothing to do. That's just a methodology. It takes you to discover your limitlessness. Okay? And this is what he says. If you don't see the reality accurately, you imagine. So now what is the solution to give up your imagination? See the reality accurately. Then imaginations will automatically go away. Right? So if I is mistaken to be so many different entities by different people, I have to examine what it is. When I accurately understand, then what happens? All these different conclusions go away. Naturally go away for me. Because I understand what it is. And what I understand is in keeping with what already is. Okay? So this is where, and that blesses you. What a blessing in one lifetime. You shift your perspective from one helpless individual to what? I am the truth of the whole universe. And I and Ishvara enjoy the same truth. This is the highest one can go. Show me something which is higher than that. Okay, so this is what he says, that if the ignorance also leads to what? A conclusion, adhyasa. There is a very nice section in Brahma Sutra. Before the Brahma Sutras begin, Adi Shankaracharya has written probably, I think, his best piece ever, and that is what is called Adhyasa Bhashyam. Adhyasa Bhashyam is a work of a genius. He explains what exactly is the nature of problem. Before you begin to solve the problem, you need to understand what is the nature of problem. Otherwise, you will be just grappling in dark, solving something, trying to solve something without even understanding what is it that you are trying to solve. So he very intelligently shows the nature of problem. Basically, it was two elements, and this is exactly what is included by. The first is that of ignorance. Ignorance means you don't see rope exactly as what the rope is. That is ignorance. But that is not just what is happening because you don't see what it is accurately. What? You imagine it to be something else. That is what we call adhyaropa. There is avidya and then there is adhyaropa. There is ignorance of what is, and second problem is what? Because you don't see it accurately, you imagine it to be something else. That imagination will go away when, otherwise what happens? You move from one imagination to the other imagination. When will you stop imagining? Only when you see what is accurately. That imagination, what is the root cause of that imagination? The ignorance. So if you want to stop your imagination, what do you need to see? Re-examine and see if am I first concluding seeing something accurately or not. I have to address what? Avidya.
Avidya and second you said?
Adhyaropa.
Or
Avidya is ignorance and adhyaropa is what? My imagination as a result of ignorance. So, in the next verse, if this is the nature of the problem, which is what? Twofold, avidya and adhyaropa. Avidya is ignorance, and because of ignorance, if it was total ignorance, there will not be any problem. If I totally did not see the rope, there is no problem. But if I see an object, and if I don't see it accurately, then I create notion about what it is. And that's exactly how it is with reference to Atma. I see I am, but I don't see it accurately. And therefore, I have n number of imaginations about what Atma is. If I didn't totally know what is Atma, there will never be a question, who am I? So there is ignorance and there is adhyaropa. So in the next verse, he says, now how do I address this dual problem of ignorance and imagination? He says in the 18th verse, Nishchitayam yatha rajvam vikalpaha vinivartate rajjureva iti cha advaitam tadvat atma vinishchaya. Brilliant. Okay? He says, as all the misconceptions about the rope, whether you imagine it to be a snake or a stream of water or anything, right, will go away when the rope alone, and the rope alone remains when its real nature is ascertained in the form. Okay? What is the form? In this way, what is the way? It is nothing but a rope. Okay? So also is the definite knowledge about the nature of Atma. Okay? All these different things about what is the rope from one imagination to the other. One person will say, now see how the world operates. Okay? Nobody knows what exactly the rope is. So therefore, one imagines it to be a snake. Now the other person who poses as a wise person comes and says, hey, I will help you. This is what? How will you help me? This is such a negative thinking. Okay? The snake that you see is such a negative thinking. Think more positively. Oh, so what is this positive thinking that I should? Oh, imagine it to be a beautiful necklace. So you will move from one imagination to the other imagination, and it has got nothing to do with what? The reality. Vedanta, being alive to reality. Then somebody will say, oh, this necklace and all will give this material. Why don't you do more spiritual and imagine it to be just one stream of water? Because that necklace that you imagine is all material, it's all wealth and it's all useless. That means you'll move from snake to necklace to stream of water to I don't know what, and you'll keep moving. Until the time that you what? Remove the ignorance about what is. Only when you remove the ignorance about what is, all these imaginations will what? Collapse in one go. Is there any possibility of new imagination? No. Because it is well acetate. These hours and hours and hours of thinking about Atma, what is it meant for? Making you see yourself clearly. And your conclusions about who you are, which are either totally erroneous or partially true, okay, will only go away when you see what? Yourself clearly. And this is the commitment of Upanishad. And this is the search. And this is what we are here to do. We are not here to dismiss world as mithya. What difference does it make to my life? True. It's true. We are here to discover truth of ourselves. And in the process of inquiry, we discover that the world depends upon us. It is mithya. My God, lovely. Vedanta. Now, time for lunch.
Thank you.
Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.